We thank you all for coming. We have prepared for you a stunning program. First of all, let me say that the Branson Centennial Museum is in this particular location, formerly the Reese Shoes and Boots. We're here as guests. The museum is Barbara and Joe Reese, for which we are most grateful, and is the community. The Tuesday Talk Committee, you know, everything requires a committee in American life. We do have one that develops our programs, which consists of Ann McDowell, Chris Bohentz, Linda Burlingame, and Curtis Copeland. And I hope you will appreciate the work they do. One little news announcement about the White River Valley Historical Society, of which this museum is a part. We have a new executive director, Trish Trimble, succeeding Leslie Wyman retiring. The September 3rd Tuesday program will be Curtis Copeland and Tom Kobe, entitled Ozark Hillbillies, Stereotype and Reality. I don't know whether that's autobiographical or what. Also, that is the title of a book which we hope will be published about that time. Now I'd like to ask Ann McDowell to talk to you a few minutes about the Ozark Community Christmas Tree.
Thanks, Jim. I'm Ann McDowell. Besides being on the committee for putting these presentations together, I also head up the Branson Christmas Coalition. And we were fortunate enough to begin a Branson Community Christmas Tree last year. You may have seen it in front of the Branson Ferris wheel. It was called United We Stand. We got ornaments from across the country, all the different states, and decorated that tree. This year, we have a whole new concept, a whole new idea for that tree. We're going to call it Be the Light. And that began when Cuvera Partners, who developed the aquarium, decided to donate the crystal chandelier that used to hang in the Grand Palace lobby to the Branson Centennial Museum. As they were redeveloping that property, aquarium didn't really need a 16-foot, 10,000 crystal, $40,000 chandelier, believe it or not. So they were kind enough and generous enough to give that to the museum, and then what the Christmas Coalition needed was something to decorate that tree with this year. So we're going to take almost 10,000 crystals, real Austrian crystals, they're beautiful, and decorate that tree and call it Be the Light. And it will be a beautiful community tree for Branson in 2021, starting around the 1st of November and all the way through December there at the Branson Ferris wheel. The reason Jim wanted me to mention it today is that they're in the process of sorting, cleaning, rewiring 10,000 crystals to go onto that tree, and could sure use some extra helping hands. So if you're interested in being a part of that tree and a little bit of Branson history, let Jim know, and he's setting up times where folks can come here to the museum and help prepare the crystals, and then next month we'll be attaching them to the branches of the tree, and then the branches will go onto the tree. It's a 29-foot tree, a 39-foot display total with the base and a nice big topper on top. So it should be beautiful for Branson this Christmas season, and if anybody'd like to lend a hand, we would sure appreciate the help. Jean Babcock especially would, because she's been working very hard in the basement of this building getting all those crystals ready. Okay, thank you.
Tell them, it's easy and it's clean.
Oh, it's easy work and it's clean work.
Okay.
And it's air conditioned, so why not, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Appreciate it.
Thank you, Ann, very much. Everybody seems to be interested in bears, partly because they're in the backyards of some of you, perhaps. So we, knowing that, we then invited Francis Skalicky to come with us and talk about bears. Mr. Skalicky is the media specialist for the Regional Missouri Department of Conservation out of Springfield, basically?
Yes, out of Springfield.
And for 11 years he was a sports writer, which must have been interesting for him. And he became in 1996 in the position of media specialist. Beginning in 2010, he was involved with the bear research project. Also in 2020, he was inducted into the Missouri Sports Hall of Fame. Now, I think that's sufficient introduction because I don't want to take up your valuable time. Please come talk to us.
Thank you, Jim, and thank you for inviting me to come to talk to you about bears today. As Jim said, my name is Branson Skalicky. I'm the media specialist, the Southwest Regional Media Specialist for the Department of Conservation. I work out of our regional office in Springfield. I am a native of this area. I grew up in Bolivar, grew up on a dairy farm just south of Bolivar. I remember coming to Silver Dollar City when the only ride was the train. I do remember Shad Heller being the mayor of Silver Dollar City. I remember what a big deal it was when Shad Heller was on the Beverly Hillbillies. If I'm not mistaken, I think Silver Dollar City was on 3 episodes of the Beverly Hillbillies. And I know my daughters would say right now, enough with the boomer references, Daddy, just go on. So anyway, I did, as I said, I did grow up in this area. I graduated from SMS. And as I've talked with Ann before, when somebody tries to say Missouri State, I say, no, SMS. It has been changed to Missouri State, but SMS. I have worked with the Department of Conservation since 1996. And before I go on, while I'm saying thank you, I do want to say thank you for the support that you have given the Missouri Department of Conservation. We are a very good fish and game agency, and the reason is the support that we get from the people. Dating back to 1936, when the Conservation Commission and the Associated Conservation Department came into existence by a vote of the people that wanted an apolitical organization and a non-political organization, something that wasn't wrapped up in the governor's cabinet. Fast forwarding to 1976, when the conservation tax was passed. If you're unfamiliar, 1/8 of 1% of the sales tax of Missouri goes towards conservation. That was voted into existence in 1976. Today that makes up about 2/3 of our funding. We value that funding. We use it, try to use it wisely for the state of Missouri. And in addition to those two specific events, it's just the ongoing support that the people of Missouri give the Department of Conservation. Whenever I speak to groups, I always say that Missouri gets it. You guys get it, why conservation, why the outdoors are so important. And a lot of the stuff we hear from other states, we don't have that here in Missouri. We have a good support of the people. We want to maintain that. And just thank you for not only for the specific events I mentioned, but the support you've given us throughout our existence as an agency. We couldn't be the successful agency we are without your support, and we're very appreciative of that. But now, moving on to bears. We have bears in Missouri, and we've had bears in Missouri in the past. I'll start with history. In pre-settlement and early settlement times, we had black bears across Missouri. And black bears is the species we have today. It's the only species we've ever had in Missouri. Grizzly bears are out west. Black bears, Lewis and Clark made numerous references to bears. Henry Schoolcraft made references to bears. There are an abundance of references to bears across Missouri. As Missouri became settled, bears disappeared through habitat destruction and through unregulated hunting. Bears were hunted for a number of reasons: for their meat, for their grease. In early Missouri, by early, I mean pre-Civil War, probably 1820s to up to the Civil War, bear grease was a valuable, or bear oil, basically the lard, the oil that's rendered from the bear fat, was a valuable component for a number of things. It was used for hair oil, it was used for soap, it was used for treating leather. When leather stiffens up, you need something to loosen it back up. It was used for all those purposes. And also there was the fright factor, which we'll kind of come back to. That is, you have a large mammal, it's hanging around my place, it's scaring me, I'm going to shoot it. So all those reasons, bears basically disappeared from Missouri. And basically, I'll get back to what I'm saying, by the early 1900s. In the late 1950s and 1960s, Arkansas started a bear reintroduction program. And before I go on, let me say, Missouri has never stocked bears. We don't stock bears today. We've never stocked bears. People have said we stock bears sometimes, but we don't. We never have. But moving back to Arkansas, from 1958 to 1968, Arkansas did a bear reintroduction program. They got their bears from Minnesota and Manitoba. And that population expanded, and since Missouri's on the top of Arkansas, as that population expanded, it did expand up into Missouri. Bear sightings started to increase in the 1970s and 1980s, 1990s. In 2010, we had done some very minimal bear studies before, basically where we had them, kind of maybe what abundance we had them, but we never really got down in the weeds about what we had with bears. Well, in 2010, we actually started trapping bears. We radial collared bears. We did genetic work on bears. When we trapped them, we extracted we drew blood. We extracted. They have a non-essential tooth. I forget its scientific name, but its common name is a non-essential molar. And we did that. That helps age them. The radial, and we did hair snares, which basically we put food within a wire enclosure, so when they crawled over that wire enclosure, they brushed hair off of their skin, and so we got genetic information from that. And from that, we gained information about age and all this kind of stuff, but one of the things we gained that was very interesting, remember I said the bears basically disappeared from Missouri. All the bears that came from Manitoba and Minnesota have the same genotype, and they can be tracked to that region of North America. We found some through our genetic testing, we found some bears that did, so where I'm going with that is all the bears who came up from Arkansas has that genotype, because before they were in Arkansas, they were descendants of Manitoba and Minnesota bears. All the bears should have had that genotype. There were some bears we found out when we started doing genetic testing. In fact, there were some in Webster County and some other places too that didn't have that genotype. So we think these were the original Missouri bears, that they are descendants of a population that never completely disappeared from Missouri. That in the remote parts of southern Missouri, they hung out, they survived. So in addition to this, the bulk of the bears we have are from this Arkansas reintroduction, but we do think we have a few native bears too. Regardless of how they got here, we do have bears today in Missouri. Our current population is somewhere around 800 bears. We continue to study them. We do radial collaring, we do some trapping, and we do tagging. Somewhere around 800 bears is a estimate. It could be a couple hundred more, could be a couple hundred less, but 800 is, we think, is a good round number. Primarily located in southern Missouri. There is reproduction going on in Missouri. There is travel. A female bear can travel about 40 miles. A male bear travels about 100 miles. Female bear weighs about 100 to 300 pounds as an adult. Male bears weighs about 125 to 500 pounds. But I will say most of the bears in Missouri are probably in the 150 to 240, 250 range, something like that. The 500-pound male is an extreme. So, but we do have bears. They have about a 9% growth rate. That's pretty good for bear population. Bears are primarily found in wooded habitat. Well, let me put it this way. A bear's preferred habitat is a densely wooded habitat. But as we all know from our trail cams and from news stories on TVs, they don't always prefer the wooded habitats. They prefer backyards. They prefer a Catholic elementary school in St. Louis where a bear actually got in a couple of years ago. It was in a suburb of St. Louis. That is a good sign that the bear population is expanding. It's expanding its range. That's a good sign that the population is expanding. As I said, about a 9% growth rate. That's a healthy population growth rate for bears. We continue to study them. What we do, we put the radial collars on the females. We track them to this way. The way the radial collar works, it's very interesting. It will actually stay on the bear for about a year, and then it doesn't hurt the bear, but it actually kind of blows off, kind of boom, drops off, and that way we can use the bear collar again. It doesn't hurt the bear, but it continues to beep, so we can, if the collar ceases to move, we know the bear either died or the collar is blown off and we can retrieve it. So it's a good way, because these collars are expensive, so we try to be as economical as possible. But the females that are collared, we can track them actually to the den, and we actually do den studies in the winter. And what we do, bears do not hibernate. And I know you've always heard that. The correct term would probably be overwinter. Well, let me put it this way. They don't hibernate in the truest definition of the word hibernation. A groundhog, a ground squirrel, that's true hibernation. They basically go into a comatose state where from November till late February or March, it's very, very hard to rouse them. They are basically in like I say, a comatose state. Bears do have activity in the winter. Schoolcraft noted in January all the bear tracks he was seeing around, I think it was Swan Creek, what became Swan Creek. Those are mostly the males that move around. The females are less, they move around less. They have their offspring, they have their cubs in the winter, sometimes when they're asleep. So obviously I've never had a child, but that'd be a heck of a thing to wake up to. 2 or 3 cubs. So yeah, so and not all, but sometimes actually when they're asleep they give birth. So, and the cubs, they stay with the mom. They stay with the mother for around a year. And as I said, the males are a little bit more active because when they den up, yes, they all den up, but they don't den up as a family unit. The females den up by themselves. And getting back to how we study the cubs, it's kind of interesting. We can, because these bears are radial collared, we can track them to their dens, and we have a hypodermic needles. We can either hypo them with a gun, or we can just with a pole, and we stick the mother. They're out for about 30 minutes, and we can study the cubs basically, if how many cubs they had, what health they seem to be. All this goes into formulas which are used to study the overall population health of the bears. Same thing in the summertime when we trap a bear, we hypo it, we shoot it with a hypodermic needle, and this is kind of an interesting thing. And I've actually been on with our biologists when they've knocked out a bear. It's a precise formula of drugs that you give it. You don't want to, what these drugs do, they slow down its heart rate, they slow down all of its body functions. If you slow it down too much, they will die. You don't want to do that. So it's kind of precise science. And also you have about 45 minutes to weigh the bear, which weighing a 280 or 300 pound bear, it's an interesting task. But yeah, you just have several people and you hold it up, but anyway, you have and you're doing all and you actually have somebody timing. You have somebody timing what you're doing it. And what's interesting about when you think, I mean, according to Hollywood and cartoons and stuff, when something's tranquilized, it's knocked out. The bear is actually still awake, because it's just slowed down to the point where it can't do anything. So you're sticking it with a needle, you're pulling this molar, and it's just kind of looking at you like, why? What's going on? And it's kind of licking itself, but like I say, it's slowed down to the point where it can't do anything, but it's not slowed down to the point where it would possibly die. It is actually still awake, and it looks at you, and every now and then it kind of moves its head. And after we get our work done, and like I say, there's actually somebody keeping time, then we back off and we let the bear come to it, and I've seen this happen a couple times too. The bear will rouse out of its drowsiness, and it'll look around, and and it'll walk off. It'll come back to its full senses, because obviously, if we study a bear and kill it, we haven't accomplished much. We want it to know what its routines are, where it goes, how far it travels, what it does. So we have to have it, so that's why we want to make sure that it comes out of this drug state completely healthy. And the two bears I've been around, they stand up, they kind of do that dog shake thing, and then they just kind of walk off. One was kind of wobbly, but it got its legs. The other one just kind of basically walked off normally. So that's how the bears are studied. And like I say, the collaring, the reproductive rate, the health, the genetics, all this goes into, obviously we can't count every bears, but we use this as a template to show how bears are doing. I mean, if we know what a bear's reproductive rate is, and we track so many females, we can use that to get a population rate. If we see where bears are traveling, well, we can use that across southern Missouri, which is primarily where bears are at in Missouri. There have been some north of the Missouri River. In fact, there was one tagged in Christian County that ended up in Warrenton, which is north of the Missouri River. And that was and then it ended up in Cape Girardeau after that. So that was quite a traveling bear. So, and all this goes to, as I said, we are just trying to educate ourselves more about bears. And along with that, we want to educate the people too. One question that always comes up is, do bears attack humans? Well, and the internet will tell you, I can't say never. There are some instances of black bears, but I will say it's uncommon. I'll get back to the uncommon in a minute. There's some instances of, thankfully never in Missouri, but yes, they have attacked they have attacked humans. In the fall, they go through a very heavy feeding time, and it seems like the couple that I'm thinking of took this. When they're preparing for hibernation, it's called hyperphagia. They, I forget, it's an insane amount of calories. They eat like 20 hours a day. And they just basically eat because they're going to get fat for the winter. Well, they are omnivores. They eat both vegetative matter and meat. So, and as I said, the couple instances, one was in Tennessee, and I think one was out in Wyoming and whatever. That was in the fall. However, I don't want to leave you with that image. The image I'd rather leave you with of the black bears is, I remember several years ago, KSPR had a story about a woman in Webster County who had a bear in her yard, and she chased it out of her yard with a broom. It was just, and they showed, I don't know where they got the video clip. I don't know who's like, if a woman is chasing a bear, I mean, your daughter, oh, let me film this. I'm not going to help you, but let me film this, Mom. So, but it was truly just like she was chasing a dog out of, I mean, it was like, get out, get out. She just kept swatting the bear. And that's the image that's probably closer to the bears we have around, the bears in Missouri, the black bears. They're looking for food, and they're looking for easily provided food. And we want people to respect bears. They are a very large mammal. But I'll give you another example. What we don't want to have, me and my family was in Glacier several years ago, and we were hiking in Montana, and we were hiking one of the trails, and there was a bear, black bear, relatively close. And the woman behind me, I wanted to show her there was a bear just so she could get some pictures. But I said, look, there's a bear. She just, her face got white, and she just runs back down the trail screaming, people, there's a bear up there, there's a bear up there, turn around. It's like, okay, that's not the reaction we want people to have about bears. We do want them to respect them. We don't want them to cuddle them and name them and stuff like that. But we don't want them to freak out every time they see a bear, especially in the wild. They are part of Missouri's wild. It's a good thing we have bears in Missouri. The more diverse your biological landscape is, the better your outdoors are. Bears is that one more notch of diversity that we have. But nevertheless, just because we have bears and that makes outdoors a great place, we still don't want bears hanging around our home. And that's where most of our bear stories come. That's where most of our bear problems come. What happens a lot of times is these are young adult males. What happens in a bear family is the cubs will stay with the mom for about a year, and then in the next winter, when the mother has a new set of cubs, these young adult males get sent off because their mom's got a new family now. You guys, you young adults, fend for yourselves. So these are young adult males who are looking for new territories, looking for new everything, and those are the ones that frequently stumble into yards, into schools in some cases. Like I said, the case in St. Louis, it was a St. Louis suburb, into all these kind of places where they're not normally found. They're just looking for territories they can call their own. They're kind of learning about the world around them, and they're just looking for food. So what we as humans don't want to do is provide them with that food. Now, we definitely don't want to do it intentionally, but accidentally even, what they're looking for is easy food. And that can come sometimes in the way of trash cans that have unsecured lids. It can come in the way of a bird feeder. It can come in the way of a cattle feeder. It can come in the way of a pet food dish. By the way, a little sidelight on cattle feeder. One time, this was such a misquote that it was so funny. I was doing a TV story in Joplin about bears, and they were asking me what things bears can come to, and I said bird seed and unsecured trash cans and cattle feed. And the story that got on the TV that night, the Missouri Department of Conservation says bears come down to unsecured trash can, bird seed, and camel feed. In all fairness, I don't quite know what camels eat. I would presume bears would come to camel feed, but I did email her and said, good story. But I think I said cattle feed. I don't think we have a lot of camels in southern Missouri. But nevertheless, what they do come down to is like I said, and so what we don't want to give them is this easy food. And we do have to be more cognizant of the fact that we do have bears, especially in southern Missouri. It is a possibility, especially if you live in a rural landscape, sometimes even an urban landscape. So what we call bear aware. We just want to be a little bit more bear aware. Secure, if we have a trash can, secure those lids. You can actually buy bear-proof trash cans, but just somehow secure the lid. If you have pet food dishes, make sure there's no residual pet food. I know a lot of us like to put the food out for the dog. The dog eats part of it, leaves a little bit behind. That attracts bears. Bird feeders, if you have a bear problem, you can move them. I know cattle feeders are a little bit more difficult to move, and I suppose camel feeders would be too. But anyway, they're a little bit more difficult to move. But if you have a bear around your home, you don't want to, think about why it's there. You don't want to give it a reason to stay. You want it to move on. And as I said, a lot of times it's just some simple scare tactics. Make noise, fireworks work. If you can't get this bear to move on, you can call the Department of Conservation or conservation agents, and we have actually a wildlife damage biologist that works in southern Missouri that can give you pyrotechnics. There's something called shell crackers, which is basically like a combination of shotgun shell and a fireworks. It doesn't penetrate the skin, but you shoot the bear and it bounces off the bear and makes a really loud explosion. Make a really loud report, and that will scare the bear. There's various things we can do or you can do to get the bear to move on. That's what you want to do, because on either end of a bear around your house, it's a bad thing. For the human, obviously, and as I said, the threat to human safety is low, but the threat to property safety is very real. You have a very large mammal that's looking for food. It's going to get more aggressive with its search. So chances are it's going to be tearing up things, and that, like I say, that may not cause you physical damage, but it causes you pocketbook damage, and that can be just as painful in some ways. For the bear side of it, it's also a bad thing, because studies have shown that the more a bear acclimates, gets used to these human-provided food, even though it's accidental, the less they can forage on their own, and the bear usually ends up getting euthanized. Even if it would be trapped and moved, it would just be looking for the next home to feed at. Because, and I don't really understand what goes on in the bear brain, but what we do know is that the more, as I said, the more it gets used to human-provided food, the less it can forage on its own. And if you move that bear, chances are it may just be looking for the next home. So that you want to, I mean, they will come around. Obviously, like I say, we've seen that in numerous trail cam incidents, TV stories. They will come around, but the key is you don't want to keep them around. You want to get them to move on, move them back to the wild to forage like a bear is supposed to be foraging. And so that's what our big campaign is, or our big message now about bear awareness. We want to make Missourians basically comfortable with living with bears. And what I'm saying comfortable, again, I don't mean that we cuddle them and hug them and stuff like that, but we want to make Missourians know that they're here, they're probably here to stay, hopefully they're here to stay, and that yes, we can coexist with them. If they get too close to us, we can move them on. And if they're in the wild, obviously if you're camping, that's another thing too. That's another place you see bears. You don't want to leave food out. Make sure it's putting a food maybe up a little bit on a low-hanging tree branch isn't enough. You put it in your vehicle. Just try to get rid of all the smell that a bear can smell, because a bear is one of the best smelling mammals there are. I mean, you look at its head, a lot of its head is nose. And you can read various things. A bear can smell X number of times better than a human. And I forget the exact number, but it's a lot better than a human. I mean, I do know, and this is, obviously we don't have polar bears in Missouri, but I read that a polar bear can smell something 20 miles away. So, and when you think about the landscape in the Arctic, it's probably pretty smooth, and I don't know, but nevertheless, regardless of where your bear is, it can smell very well. So that's where a lot of times the problems with camping come in, and sometimes the problems with other things. They can smell stuff, so you want to eliminate the food, eliminate what they're smelling, get them to move on. And as I said, if we can't help you, or I mean, if you can't do it yourself, we can help you do that. And we're more than happy to do that. We do have a bear season this fall coming up. The dates, I should know this off the top of my head. It's October 20, come on. It's October, next page. Here we go, October 18th through 27th. I mean, I could talk about that too. I'm not really here to talk about that, but it's just the bear population has grown to the extent that we can provide a recreational opportunity. In all honesty, it probably won't reduce the number of bear-human conflicts we have that much, and that gets back to that 9% growth rate. But it won't, on the other side, it won't decrease the chances of you seeing a bear in the wild too. The best example I can give is Missouri's deer season. When you combine archery and all the firearms opportunities we have, each year we kill about over 200, sometimes it's 220, 230,000 deer in Missouri. As we all know, we still see plenty of deer each year in Missouri. Same thing with the bear season. It's not set up so, that we would eradicate bears from Missouri. It's just a sporting opportunity that the population has increased to the point we can provide it for people who want to hunt bears. From a hunter standpoint, it's pretty neat to participate in the first of something. This is the first Missouri bear season we've ever had. So it's just interesting to participate in that. So, but as I said, if you're a non-hunter and if you do like seeing bears, this hunting season probably won't affect your chances of decrease or increase your chances of seeing them at all, because of that. Missouri's bear population is very stable, and that 9% growth rate, it's very solid. So now, I always have questions, so I'll open it. I can keep talking, but I'm sure there's questions too. So at this point, does anybody have any questions? Yes, sir.
I have 3 bird feeders, and I know they destroy bird feeders.
Right,
And I have a koi pond that has 2 dozen koi in it, and they're each one of them worth over $100 a piece.
right.
So how do I keep bears out of there?
One thing you could do is build a fence around, but before you get to that, fencing always works, electric fencing, but what I would do is you would contact, where do you live in here, Taney County? Or Stone County?
I'm on the line of Stone and Taney County.
Okay, and I can get with you afterwards. As I said, we have a wildlife damage control biologist. I can pass your information on to him, and he works with homeowners who are having bear problems or who think they could have, and especially if it involves financial loss, which yours obviously does. So, the fencing is always a good answer, and probably he will advise that. He might give you some tips on what to do. But the short answer is you can call the Missouri Department of Conservation, and we can set you up with some information about how to avoid bear problems or prevent them from being more if you're already having them. So, any other questions?
I need to know how I can get in touch with this one.
Yeah, I can, after we're all done here, I'll hook up with you and we'll do that. So,
Yeah.
yes, ma'am.
Do you have a graph that shows what the population is in the Missouri counties where there are the bears?
No, I don't, but there is a lot of bear information on our website, and I can tell you, it's not really a graph, but there's a map with a lot of dots of all the bear sightings. The majority, basically all the dots are in southern Missouri, and that's because, like I say, there's this Arkansas population, and that's because we have, even though they've shown that they can adapt to a lot of habitats, we do have a lot of wooded habitat down here. So the bulk of the bear population is southern Missouri. I can't really say which is heavier than the other. South central Missouri, like the West Plains, Ozark County, Howell County, that whole area, and southeast Missouri also, but especially south central Missouri, they do have a lot of bears. But as our news stories and as our trail cam videos show us, we also have a lot of bears here in southwest Missouri too. So Webster County seems to be one of the hot spots, but there are others too. We had a bear sighting at Bodart Conservation Area in Greene County about 2 or 3 weeks ago. So, yes.
So then, is it good to walk with a whistle? Does that help?
Yes. If you see a bear, I'm glad you asked that. Basically, what you want to do is make noise, and the about raising up and making yourself big, that works. You can clap. The thing you don't want to do is run. Remember, you got to remember that bear doesn't want to be around you any more than you want to be around it. And if you leave it an escape route, it will go there. And if you back away slowly, it will be not excited. But if you run, that gets it excited. Now, kind of a caveat to if you see a bear, if you see cubs, get out of there very gracefully and diplomatically, but quickly too, because there's a mother around. A mother is very good at watching its cubs, watching her cubs. So if you see cubs, that is an immediate sign to exit that area. Wherever you're going, take another route around where those cubs are. So, yes.
And one more.
That's fine.
Is my dog in danger, or does she have more common sense?
Well, the main reason dogs get in danger, and I know this is a different animal, but it's kind of the same reason you have a lot of dogs sprayed by skunks. Dogs will not leave an animal alone. It will keep, a lot of dogs, they will keep barking, they will keep pestering it. And so a skunk sprays, a bear lashes back eventually, especially if a bear is cornered. And it is a smaller mammal. So the main way a dog would be in trouble is just its nature of not being able to leave something alone. As far as a bear coming to your property just to hunt for your pets, no. Like I say, it's going to take easy food sources. Easy food sources are trash, feed, birdseed, pet food, things like that. But as I said, with a dog, if it pesters that bear, and won't leave it alone, will a bear eventually lash back. So, you know. Yes, sir.
Can you identify bear scat if I showed you a picture of it?
I could definitely, I think I could, so, but, okay.
Does it smell like berries?
There's actually here, I think there's actually I think there's a picture in here even. Let's see here.
I honestly don't know if this is bear scat or constipated deer.
I would say that's more like a coyote, probably.
We don't have coyotes.
Okay, well,
We have bears, but we don't
well,
have
I mean,
coyotes.
it could be a bear, but it just depends what it's eating. If it's eating berries, it's all over the place. If it's eating insects and things like that, it is a bit firmer. Sorry if anybody's eating them, but it could be a bear. It could be, but
It's 10 foot from our house.
okay. Well, do you have trail camera?
I've never caught one on it.
Okay, all right. Well, I would
Yes,
just keep your eyes open. I mean, the answer is it could be. I don't know. It's not, the shape isn't totally bearish, but I mean there are exceptions, so it could be. So
You want to see it?
yes. What?
It's not a coyote.
More of a rounded type.
Yeah, we don't have any
So,
in our house.
but like I said, if it's eating a lot of berries, it's just a loose blob. If it's eating a lot of insects and things like that, it's a firmer type of excrement. So
Do they eat corn?
Yeah, probably is.
they could. They're opportunists, so they could eat corn.
Out at Seaville, they think they've got one eating.
Okay. Okay. I mean, it could. So, you know, it's just like I say, they are opportunists. It's whatever easiest provided. Their teeth are definitely that they could grind it up. So, I mean, bird seed, if they could eat that, they could probably go up to a little bit higher. So, cracked corn would be better than whole shell corn, but.
This is actually growing.
Oh, well, they could do that. They could do that too. So, yeah, it's just whatever's easiest when they're looking for food. So. Yes.
I like to watch the series on TV alone, and that's where I've seen a lot of bears.
Uh-huh.
Are you familiar with that alone?
I am not familiar with the TV show. I'm sorry.
Okay, it's very interesting.
Okay.
And the rest of my question might not.
I'm sorry. Well, let's walk a little bit together and see where we go. So.
Well, I come away from that show a little afraid of bears, that they might be after you. These 10 people are put in different areas, and the last man standing wins money, and they are alone. And they talk about the bears, you see the bears,
Right.
they record them, but they all have a bear horn.
Right.
And then also their food that they get, they know that they want to put it high up,
Right.
and sometimes they find out they didn't put it high enough.
Right.
Because they came, but I know this alone is produced by people who know about bears, foxes
Right.
and stuff, but I do come away from the TV watching alone, that
Right.
bears could get you.
Okay, what you just said is right. There are exceptions to every rule, and as I said, there are plenty of stories. If you Google bear attacks on the internet, if you Google fatal bear attacks, you will get hits. So there are instances that it occurs. But I want to keep going back to this woman who chased a bear away with a broom in Webster County. That is the more common, and I'm not saying if you see a bear, you grab your broom and go at it. You know, you can keep your distance. But what I'm saying is that as far as them hunting humans, there's probably a few instances where they maybe actually attacked humans, and you know, in the fall when they're going through this hyperphagia. But the instance of that happening is very uncommon. Mostly they're looking for easy food. Humans are not easy food. They're a lot easier food, even in the wild where there's berries, they're whatever. We would not be their first choice. So again, I'm not gonna, and I'm not familiar with the show, but I'm not saying they're fakers. I mean, they film, they know what they film, but I will say that it is uncommon. Their primary source of food would not be humans. They do not lay awake at night thinking how they can ambush humans. So, you know, and so while it happens, and it probably will happen again, that is uncommon. So.
I have a question.
Yes.
Do black bears climb trees?
Yes, yes they do.
How high?
Not trying to be clever, but as high as they need to. So, and I'm not trying to be funny, but that's, I mean, that's with anything, so.
Well, I saw a sign in Canada, it's get above 3 meters or something.
Right, right. When we shoot bears with the darts, when you drug them, quite often one of their first responses is they climb up a tree. And then we have to watch out so they don't hurt them. So sometimes what we've done is actually put stuff, so if they fall, they obviously fall on a trampoline type device or something like that, and they don't hurt themselves. But I'm not saying that sometimes they just, but we've had a couple that after we tranquilized them, they climbed a tree. And so then that is and we're ready for that situation, but you know, that's happened sometimes too. Yes. Oh.
I was just saying, when the tree starts going like this, it'll cut.
Right, right. And you know, so, but yes, they do climb trees, and often, I mean, this comes from when they're young. When bear cubs are threatened, some of the first things they do is climb trees. Mama defends, you know, youngins get up safe. So they know how to climb trees almost from the time that they're out and about and active. So, yes. No, we get that question quite frequently, and no, we're good for now. But you know, I guess just keep checking with. Usually, it's our staff and University of Missouri wildlife students, and here we've also had some people from other states too. We've partnered. We have a good partnership with Mississippi, and we've had some bear experts from Mississippi who've helped us with, because you know, more knowledge is better. You know, it's because we can compare what's going on in other states and things like that. So answer is no, but you know, it's one of the more popular internal things I say, you know, that if ever our bear biologist, Laura Conley, who you may see on media interviews, she's a very wonderful, very knowledgeable person. She has studied bears, she's managed bears for various state wildlife agencies in several states. Whenever she puts out an email, it's like about, I'm going on a den study. Does anybody, you know, want it? That email fills up immediately. So yes. So, but yeah. So it's an interest, and you know, and that's why it's interesting to talk about bears. Whether it's internal to science folks, whether it's just the citizens who didn't grow up, I mean, who don't have biology degrees, bears are still interesting. They're a large mammal. They are a charismatic mammal, you know, and we do want them around. And as I said, the hunting opportunity that we're initiating this fall, it's not to eradicate them from the state. It's just because we now have a population that can support hunting, like we have a deer population that can support a deer season, like we have a turkey population that can support a turkey season. It just goes in line with that. The bear hunting that takes place this fall will not increase or decrease your chance of seeing a bear. It's with the growth rate we have, it will fold in with all the other activities we have. So any other questions? Or well, thank you all for being here. It's been a pleasure. I'll be back in a time.